What is up? Good morning. Happy Thursday. Welcome to my weekly office hours. My name is JDM, aka Josh David Miller, and this is the time that I take every week to answer whatever questions you guys have about startups and entrepreneurship. So let's gonna dive right in here. So I'm gonna open up with a question for you guys. I always have some questions I'd like to get you guys involved in the conversation here. So my question of the week is, what's the biggest risk that you're not thinking about right now? This is also the question that I asked in my newsletter this week. And for context, it comes from the idea that when you're, say, an early stage startup, which I know a lot of you are, you're rightly worried about things like, desirability. Do people want the thing that I'm building? And maybe eventually you're worried about, can I make money at this? Is it viable? Is it feasible? Can I get this thing done? And so forth. And that's again, that's right. And as you get a little further on, you're probably thinking about defensibility and IP and so forth. But there's always like some risk that's lurking beneath the surface. And particularly when you're early on, it does not deserve all of your focus. Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't deserve all of your focus, but it does deserve to be in the back of your mind. And so some of the risks that you might not be thinking about that aren't so obvious have to do with changes in the outside of your company, external to your company, the changes that might be going on in the marketplace that could just sink you. So think about them, and you can use the acronym sort of STEEP, STEEP, to think about those risks. They're societal, technological, environmental, economic, and political, right? And that's just kind of a rough categorization. And so, there's been a lot of talk, of course, the last couple of weeks, even of something like Silicon Valley Bank and the financial trouble there, right? That is an outside economic factor that could impact your business, but there are other things that could just sink you. Are there regulatory changes that are coming? Is there a change in the cultural zeitgeist or in the political zeitgeist that might lead to customers not really loving what you're doing as much, or making it harder to do, or more feasible to do, or to make competition easier or more difficult? What are the kinds of things that you're not thinking about right now that in 2 or 3 years' time could really spell the death knell of your startup? I'm curious. Let me know down in the comments what such a risk might look like for you. Okay, let's dive into our first question. So I have the questions this week are on mostly, and not exclusively, though mostly on questions that I got just from different events that I've been doing lately. So these are questions that several entrepreneurs asked. So I'm going to do it in a generalized form. So one is, how do I find the right prototype? Really common question. And it's the answer is simple, but it's actually pretty complicated. And you'll see why in a second. So first of all, okay, why are you doing a prototype? It's because you want to learn something. You want to get some validation from customers, what we call in the lean startup method, validated learning. This is where, you have some hypothesis, you've done some thinking in your head, and now we're going to go out to the market and actually do some tests and find out if we're right. We're going to run some experiments. Maybe it's not quite that formal. And this is the build, measure, learn loop, right? So in order to learn, you have to measure, and measurement means experiment. So rapid prototyping is one way of doing that. And this is where you take some type of realistic looking facade of the real product. You put it in front of customers and you get their feedback. You have them walk through it, them use it, and they react to it in real time. So how do you find the right way to do that? So if you're thinking about a software product, this is the easiest example. So I'm going to start here. So if you think about a software product, what you want to do is find the moment of greatest value, or the wow moment, or what some call the magic moment. This is the moment, if you think about the 483 things that your product does, there's some one thing in there, principally one thing in there that is so different, so special, so unique, so powerful, that when a user sees it, they will immediately get the value that you're trying to create. Even if there's so much more value they're going to create, there's this one moment where they're going to use it and go, oh my gosh, where's this been my whole life? Take my money, right? What is that moment? That moment that they get the greatest value from your product. So think about the whole flow, all of the different things, all the ideas that you have floating around in your head for how you're going to solve this problem. And then come up with what is that moment of greatest value, and then create a few screens before it, a few screens after it, set it up so that the story makes sense. So in the context of their life, however they're going to engage with the app. Let's say it was like a to-do app. That's a common thing that I do because it's an easy example to talk about. So then it might be like, oh, you think of something that you want to remember that you have to get done, right? So you're going to start there, and what do? They open the app. Okay, they click the add to do button, then they add this in here. Now there's no magic here, but let's say we were to introduce some radical thing like AI that was going to intelligently put that to do in context of the right people and in your calendar and so forth. There's some tools out there to do stuff like that, but it's pretty different than your average to-do app. So the moment of greatest value isn't going to be just creating a to-do or looking at my list of to-dos. It's going to be when that to-do does that thing where it ends up on my calendar, scheduled with the right people and so forth. So then you're going to show those screens doing that. And when I say show these screens, I'm talking about like medium fidelity, leaning into like high fidelity, but non-functional. So this is something you put together in less than a day. It's a rapid prototype, non-functional prototype, what Google used to call a pretotype, like before a prototype, a pretotype. And then you put that in front of a customer and you have them click through it, walk through it, and they narrate out loud the thing. Okay, so I go in and I want to add a to-do here. How do I do? Oh, I see there's a button in the bottom right. Okay, cool. So I click that. And then they walk through it, right? And as they're doing that, you're learning from them what their struggles are, what they get, what they don't get. So I like dropped a little hint in there, that they didn't know how to add a new to-do. Your button was not obvious enough. And so you learn even the little things like that. But what you're going for is that moment when they're going through that process, to continue with our to-do example, where they go like, okay, so now I finish adding the to-do and it just put that on my calendar. Yeah, but and it invited, a Susie from the UX team, and and it's so they're like, oh my gosh, like that's amazing. I would have had to do this like in 3 steps manually. It's a contrived example. It's fake. It's bad. But you get the idea. You're looking for that moment where they're going, wow, that's a magic moment for them. That they're like, yeah, I love this thing. That literally whites of their eyes, right? Crazy eyes. That's the moment you're looking for. So what is the moment that you think is going to do that? And then you get in front of 5 customers, you show them that prototype that, again, you spent less than a day on, probably an hour or 2 on, honestly. And then you see, do you get that? And if you don't, use the information to iterate, and then you do another version of the same thing, 5 more customers, keep going, 5 more customers, keep on 5 more customers, until you're consistently identifying both the right customers to get in front of and are getting that wow moment every time, or almost every time, right? So that's like the software example. And so if you're thinking outside of software, you might be thinking, maybe you're in manufacturing, which was actually one of the questions that I got. Or you might be thinking, something that's maybe a service business or anything else. You can prototype anything. But it's going to look a little bit different. You might not be doing screens. You might be prototyping an experience or some way that somebody engages with you. But if you are doing any of those non-software things, that doesn't mean that the prototype isn't something with screens. So if your principal means, for example, of customer acquisition are on a landing page of some type, it might make sense to actually prototype that landing page, right? So you put the value prop on and the problem and the solution. You got nice there, testimonial, whatever, maybe a video, who knows. Keep it light, keep it simple, keep it easy. Again, less than 1 day. And then you put that in front of people, have them narrate out loud as they're going through that process. And they're going to tell you like what makes sense, what didn't make sense, what words land, what words didn't land. Are they finding the call to action? Are they actually clicking the call to action because that was interesting to them? Are they able to like complete the task that they came for, which in the case of a landing page, the task is probably to learn about you and sign up if it's right. And so you can get that same level of knowledge from there, even if it's not software. But even if you're doing something that's physical and manufactured, you can still create a less than 1 day rapid prototype for something like that. What that looks like will be heavily dependent on what you're manufacturing. But I've seen it done with robots. I've seen it done with consumer packaged goods, like things that people buy. I've seen it done with food. It's probably obvious how you could do that with food, right? So you can prototype anything. If you want to figure out how you prototype something, again, comments, we'll talk about how to prototype, what you can prototype that. But that's how you want to do it. You want to look at, okay, I want to put something in front of a customer that's going to get me data. And the way that I do this, I want to find out if the value that I think I'm creating is the value that I'm actually creating for them. So I find the moment of greatest value where I'm going to see the most impact. And I find a way to create a fictional representation, this facade of the thing. And I put it in front of 5 customers to see if I get that. And then I iterate and iterate and iterate until I'm consistently putting it in front of the right customers and getting the result they expect out of it. So that's how you find the right prototype for, basically any moment. Yeah. So hopefully that helps. Again, we can certainly get more specific. Love to talk through any specific examples that somebody's had. Throw that in the chat, or you can submit your question to the usual. This is probably in the description, but you can hit up jdm.bio/ask, and you can submit your question that way as well. Okay, so before we move on to our next question, those of you who are in the Sacramento area, you should know that the Startup Challenge is back. So this is a super cool event that I organized with Startup Sac and with the Carlson Center at Sac State, and it's a weekend-long extravaganza. It's a competition where you learn how to create a startup by actually creating a startup from scratch. Friday night get together. Everybody gets 60 seconds to pitch a brand new idea. You don't have to, but I encourage you to pitch. Then everybody votes, and we form teams around the most popular ideas, and those teams have from Friday night till Sunday night to turn that into a real business. And it's not pretend. It's not fictional. About a third of these companies will get to revenue. That's my expectation. So it's super cool. And again, brand new ideas. But what makes this event kind of unique, other than our focus on that prototyping and traction and validation and all that, is that we have a separate cohort that's running at the same time in the same room that are companies that already exist. So they're pre-seed, but they're much further along. They maybe have a product, maybe have some customers, and they're competing to find as much traction as they can in the same time period in just that one weekend. So the structure is different for them because they're existing, but it's super fun. It's high energy. It's weekend long. We provide all the food, coffee, snacks that you need. You go home to sleep. Otherwise, we got mentors, coaches, everything that you need. Hit up this link here if you want to learn more about the Startup Challenge. And I hope that you do, because it's a really awesome event. I'll remind you guys about that next week as well. But enough shameless plug for this event that I'm really excited about. Let's move on to our next question. Again, this is a more generic question that I got here, which is, how do I get in front of the right customers? And I got this in a couple of different contexts. And the answer is the same, but it's not going to seem the same. So let me tell you the context. So one of the contexts that I got this question in was just trying to do customer interviews. Like, how do I literally get in front of the customers that I want to talk to? I know I got to do interviews. I got to do customer validation. Got to find out that they have the problem and so forth. But how do I, like, literally, how do I find them? How do I get in front of them? And then further along, another question that's, again, the same question, it just doesn't seem like it, is, okay, so we're going to do a landing page test, and we're going to see if we can get some signups going to the landing page, but how do we actually get that landing page in front of people? So those are really the same questions. It's like, where do I find my customer and how do I get in front of them? So in just a second, I'm going to give you a 3-step process that you can follow to do this. But before that, some theory here, a little bit of theory. It wouldn't be time with Josh without a little theory. So the theory is what we call distribution. And it's a mistake that a lot of startups make, is that they think about product and they think about problem and they think about solution, but they don't think about distribution, meaning how you're actually getting something in front of customers. You should not be building a damn thing until you know how you're going to get in front of a customer. Because it does not matter about your product. It doesn't matter how good it is. Doesn't matter how amazing it is at solving the problem if you can't put it in front of customers to buy and use. It just doesn't freaking matter. And it's so many startups, like literally more than half, well over half, make this mistake. Before they know how to get something in front of customers, they are building it. They're trying to make it work. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that they just think that I can't give something to customers until I have something to give, so it doesn't make sense. And that's wrong. That's absolutely wrong. There's all these validations and things that you can do to actually build up and get yourself ready for when you have the launch. But also, you're going to get all this intelligence that's going to help you make a better product so that you convert way higher when you actually make the thing. So yay, less wasted time and money. So it's great for all those reasons. So that's one reason, is that the order doesn't feel natural to a lot of people. And I get why, right? You don't go try to sell somebody a thing until you have the thing. Unless you're an entrepreneur, and that's exactly what entrepreneurs do. We go and try to sell shit to people before we have something to sell them. So you have to think about distribution first and foremost. How are you getting in front of customers? And because it could be two different things, right? It could be that we just need to figure out where they are. But different people hang out different places, which means that the customers that you end up serving are dependent on how you find them. Which means if you end up having to serve a slightly different customer because they were easier to get in front of over here, and time and capital are precious resources when you're starting out, or, well, frankly ever, but particularly when you're starting out, limited time, limited money, like I'm gonna put the money in the time where it's gonna do the most good. And that might cause you having to go over here instead of over there. And that customer looks different. But now the product that you built for this customer just isn't right anymore. And so you need to match the thing that you're building to the audience anyway. So you need to figure out how you're getting in front of them before you do the build. Okay, enough theory. So how do you do it? So the basic premise here is that we want to find out where people are, see can we get in front of them, and then find out if we're right. So here's the three-step process to do that. This is basically the three-step process to growth hacking. So step number one is you want to list every single channel that you can think of where these customers are. And I mean everyone that you can think of. You should be getting 20 or 30 channels. If you haven't, go back to Google, go back to ChatGPT, find out where people are. So these are online channels. Are they on Instagram? Great. Are they on TikTok? Great. Are they on Facebook? Great, right? If they're on Facebook, are they in a Facebook group? Do these people hang out in groups on there? Are they on subreddits, right? And we're just getting started here, right? So then it's like, okay, where are they in person? Do they go to specific trade shows? Do they all shop at Trader Joe's? Are they hanging out at bowling alleys, right? Like literally, where are all these people? If you're serving college students, then we know that they're all on campus, but they're probably also at some of the places near campus, little hangouts that are there as well. And every demographic has their own hangout. So literally, there's all the places that these people hang out. And when you're thinking about social media, you don't want to say, well, they're on Instagram. Check. What are they doing on Instagram? Are there specific influencers that they're following, that they're paying attention to? Are there certain hashtags that they're really paying attention to? That's less on Instagram, but it's still a thing, right? Are there certain topics that they're interested in? Like, what exactly is it that they're doing on those platforms? Just Instagram isn't enough, right? So you want to come up with literally 20 or 30 of these channels. These are all the places that your customers hang out. And so once you have this list, this big ass list of all the channels, then our job is to rank them. And that takes a little bit of doing. So we're first going to give basically a score to each of these things, 2 scores to each item in the list, each channel where our customers are. The first one is how many customers can I find on that channel? Are they all there? Are there a lot of them there? Are there a few of them there? Are there maybe 1 or 2 there? Are there none there, right? Like hopefully none, but where are all, like how many can I literally find? So if all else being equal, just literally how many of there? Well, they're all on Instagram and like half of them are following this particular influencer. Okay, great, cool. Where, like, just the numbers, raw numbers, how many on each channel? Next, the next thing you want to score them on is how easy it is on that channel to get in front of those customers. So for example, if they all shop at Trader Joe's, it might be fairly easy to go to a Trader Joe's and talk to customers until you get kicked out. Like, I mean, it may not be easy on our ego, and that's triggering my social anxiety right now, just talking about that. But you can do it, right? It's fairly low effort. Are they all on Instagram, but actually they're kind of hard to get in front of because it's like, let's say you're targeting new moms. Well, yeah, they're all on Instagram, but they are also heavily advertised to. So as you try to get in front of them, it's going to be hard. You're going to have a higher like cost per impression or cost per click. So like that's a little more difficult, right? So you've ranked, so you picked all the places where customers hung out. And then second, you went and added these scores to each of the channels to say how many of our customers are there and how hard is it to get in front of them. Then you actually do the ranking. So you assign the 2 scores. So the final part of step 2 is to rank these channels by efficiency. That means which channel or channels can you get in front of the most customers for the least effort. So back on like that Instagram example, if they're all following an influencer, but you have no relationship with this influencer, no means to pay them, et cetera, then that's a pretty high lift for you. You might be able to do it. You might be able to, if you can even get in touch with the influencers, maybe you can, find a way to partner with them because they're just super excited about what you're working on or something else of value that you can give them. But it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard to do. But if that influencer is your friend, right, then it suddenly becomes a lot easier. Right? Or if you have more activatable resources so you can pay them a little money, easier. Or if you already have a product to sell, and so you can do referrals, which is something content creators do all the time, then you can, offer them that. That maybe lowers the effort a little bit. You see what I'm saying? So you want, where can you get the most effort, or sorry, the most customers for the least effort? So then you rank all the channels by that factor, by their efficiency. How efficient is it to get in front of customers? Efficiency in time and efficiency in capital. Great. So step number one, list all the channels. Step two, rank them on efficiency. Which is the channel where I can get in front of the most customers for the least effort? And then third is to just run a damn experiment, right? So now you actually put a message, depending on your stage. This could be a problem statement. It could be a value prop. It could be a call to action of something more specific. But you put a message in front of customers on that channel, and you're looking for A, am I getting in front of the people that I thought that I did? And B, is my message resonating with them? And those are sequential, right? You're either getting the impressions or you're not. And if you are getting the impressions, but you're not getting the clicks, then that tells you there's a disconnect between those two things. And so then you can either iterate on the message or you can pivot on the channel, because it might just be the wrong channel. It might be that this is that the customers who are on that channel just look a little different than the customer you're trying to serve. And that's fine. Move on to the next channel, right? Or find out some of those people on that channel to talk to, find out why they're different, and see, is that different in kind or different in degrees? And is it better to serve them now or serve them later or not serve them at all? So you can kind of finesse and move that around. But that's how you get in front of the right customers. It's always those three things. And that's regardless of whether you're doing a landing page test or whether you're trying to get actual customers or whether you're just doing customer discovery. So one founder that I was talking to just yesterday, actually, was telling me that he wanted to get in front of restaurateurs. And so what did he do? He just walked into restaurants, right? Because we know where they are. So you just walk into restaurants, and that's the hustle. That's the grind. It's hard and it sucks, again, social anxiety, but you can do it. So just wherever they are, the easiest place to find somebody at their job is at their job, right? So, so find the efficient ones, go get in front of them, however that looks like. If that's getting in front of them, or, getting in front of them somehow, how are you getting in front of them? Get in front of them on those particular channels, get the data back, and then iterate and experiment, and then keep evaluating. Was it more difficult than you thought to get in front of them? Were there more or fewer people than you thought on those channels? Are they resonating with the message? And you just keep iterating and adding value on that over time. So that's basically how you do that. Cool. So I teased this a couple weeks ago, but I'll tease it again here. I've partnered with my friend Cameron Law of the Carlson Center at Sac State to launch a new podcast that will be coming out very soon. It's coming out this month with our first couple of episodes. It'll be a bi-weekly podcast called Zero to Traction, which is all about how first-time founders create companies that scale. So if you're a podcast fan, hit up zerototraction.show, kind of do a little sign up there, and then we'll send you the email when the show goes live. But that'll be very, very soon, where that show's coming live, and I'm really, really excited about that. Okay, so our last meta question, and this is a big doozy, but it's going to connect to kind of some of the things that I talked about last week, is what makes a good pitch deck? So this is like a big complex question that I'm actually going to answer really simply. A good pitch deck is one that's predictable. And that may seem counterintuitive, but when somebody's listening to a pitch, whether they're a judge at a competition, which was one of the students who had asked me that, that's a thing, right? Or whether it's an investor, which is how I'm often or most often asked about the question, we hear pitches all the time. And they follow a structure. We know how to hear them. It's like if you're a scientist of some kind and you read scientific papers all the time, you are used to their structure. You're used to them. They start out, they have a summary of some kind, they have an objective, they have methodology that they describe, they have the results, right? So we're used to digesting information that way. That's not the only way to digest information, but it's how we're used to processing it. And so if you try to give us information in a way that we're not used to processing it, it actually takes more brain power, and that works to your disadvantage. So always follow the structure. If it's a competition, just follow the rules of the competition. But if they don't specify, or if you're pitching for investment, which most of you would be doing, then definitely just follow best practice. Use the standard 10-slide structure unless you have a compelling reason not to. You want to tell us this story in a way that we're used to hearing it. And the way that we're used to hearing it is in this, like, you start out super simple, like, hey, I'm Josh. We are Zero to Traction, which is a podcast about how first time founders create startups at scale. And then I move in, right? So I started out with exactly what we're working on. Like, this is the thing. So now you have, as the listener, have context for how to hear everything else. So then now that I told you that I'm working on a podcast, I could move on to telling you about the problem, about how other podcasts might be deficient, or their source of information might be deficient, or how they're just different than the kinds of thing that we want to do. So I articulate a problem, but the context I'm talking about the problem. The context is this podcast. You don't know all the details of the podcast. You don't know the format. You don't know the structure. You don't know any of that, but you know it's a podcast about startups, right? So then I can tell you about the problem, and then I can move into the solution. Then I tell you about Zero to Traction and its features and our key advantage, and talk about all that, right? And then I can move into some of the competition, well, you may be familiar with blah, 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 blah. And so that's great. And so then we talk about how we're different from the competition, what our competitive advantage is. And then we move into how we're making money. That doesn't apply to this because it's just a free podcast. But, if we were doing, a monetary strategy that, actually, we're going to, have sponsorship after we hit X number, users or whatever. Let's say, okay, so now I'm applying that. So then I have to talk about size of market, because that's going to tell you what's my capacity here to make money. Like, what's the total addressable market here? Like, what is the size of the opportunity? So I got to paint that picture. And then I got to paint a picture of my go-to-market, how I'm getting from where I am to there. And then I got to tell you about, and I have evidence that I can do this. Like, this is all a credible theory because, look at me, I'm a background. This is actually my 4th podcast. And on top of that, I have a great co-host and blah, blah, blah. And we're going to do this and that. So I talk about that. So we got team covered, and I got a plan for how we're going to market it, and et cetera, right? So you have all that stuff, and you're telling that story. And that's a standard 10-slide story. And you can mess with the order a little bit, and do that to go with what makes narrative sense, but follow the formula, follow the structure. We're used to hearing things that way. Give us information the way we're used to be hearing it, because contrary to popular misconceptions by people who don't spend time in the startup pitch world, it's not like Shark Tank. It's not a sales pitch. You are not pitching for investment. You're pitching for a meeting. All you do when you pitch to an investor is you're trying to get another meeting. Nobody's making the formal decision on the spot. You still have due diligence and everything else that happens after that, right? All we're doing is trying to get to the next meeting. And what you're trying to do is convey information. That's it. You're trying to convey information. You're not trying to sell them. You're not trying to convince them of things. You're trying to convey the accurate state of things. So what makes a good pitch deck is one that tells a good story. What tells a good story is when you actually have done the work to make a good story. So do the work, get to a place where you're fundable, follow the standard structure, start out top with exactly who you are and what you're doing. Like I said, like, hey, I'm Josh, and the co-host of Zero to Traction, a podcast about how first-time founders create companies at scale, right? So start with that, follow the structure, and you'll be good. That's what makes a good pitch deck. So questions. So we got questions from the crowd here. So let's dive in. So Farman asks, should entrepreneurs keep improving the prototype software product if target customers not obsessed with using it, or can it be the software that is not must have for them? So it can be both, right? So this is why you want to do rapid prototyping before you build software, is because you want to lower the risk. And so if you start off with like, let me build this big software product, then if I'm wrong, or if I need to pivot, it might be the wrong customer. It might be the wrong product. It might be just that it's delivered the wrong way. All of those things are things that we can solve without ever having actually built the software, so that when we go to build it, we've already kind of nailed it, and that we build the right thing. But your broader point is totally right. So if you were to put software or a prototype in front of customer, and then they're not getting that, you're not getting the reaction, you're not getting that wow moment, or maybe if it's in the real world and it's software, like sign up for freemium, but they never really use, so they don't convert to premium, right? That could show up in different ways. They're not obsessed with using it, to use your word. It could be, right, that they're the wrong customer. It could be that it's the wrong solution. It could be that you have a UX problem in the case of software, or a usability or UX problem in the case of a consumer packaged good, maybe as well. Maybe it's just not as easy to use, or the packaging is terrible, or whatever. I'm not a CPG expert, but it could be any number of things, right? So it could be like there's just like low level, easy stuff to fix, or low effort, easy stuff to fix. Or it could be that they're behind the scenes, that, in your words, that it's this not a must have for them. It just could be that they're the wrong customer for this. It's just not what they're after, and it's just not what they're interested in. And the only way to know that is to put it in front of them, engage with them, get them talking about it, and then figure out through conversation what they're actually doing, but actually get in front of them. So maybe the reason is the customer target is not the right audience to test the prototype. Right, exactly. So and that is more often than not, right, that you have a customer problem fit problems. And so when we think about product market fit, people go before that and say, okay, you need problem solution fit. That's true, right? Problem solution fit comes before product market fit. But there's actually a step before that called customer problem fit, where you want to make sure that, and this is the distribution question, can you get in front of customers who actually experience the problem that you're trying to solve? Because if you can't, they're obviously the wrong audience for this prototype because they don't even have the problem. But then, even assuming they do have the problem, it's do they want a solution? Like, are they motivated enough? Is it urgent and severe enough, their pain, that they want a solution for it? If they do, great. And then, if so, they have the problem and they want a solution for it, are they also wanting this one? Do they want it solved with software? Do they want it solved with software this way, delivered in this mechanism, that they're going to interact with it in this way? And if the answer to that is yes, right, then the prototype will get you there, right? Because then the prototype is just about connecting those two dots, because you already know that they want this kind of solution. So if your prototype doesn't resonate, it was your execution on the prototype is wrong. Just pivot on the prototype. Right? Pivot on the prototype and see if you can get back to that promise of, yes, we want a software solution delivered this way. But if you're putting a prototype in front of somebody where you've only talked about the problem, you've actually skipped a couple of steps, and it's not going to be clear when your prototype doesn't resonate. Why? Because you don't have problem customer fit, or you don't have problem solution fit before you ever test the prototype. Now, that doesn't mean you can't do it. You absolutely can, and it can be a great exercise. But when you do the prototype, then what you want to make sure is that you keep the customer talking and that they're narrating the whole time. Because if they're narrating, you're going to pick up on little clues, and then you want to ask them to some follow-up questions on those little clues to find out why they're saying what they're saying, or why they're not saying what they're saying. Sometimes too. Have them put the problem in the context of their lives and put the solution in the context of their lives, and so forth. They probably have objections. This is normal in the process of evaluating any tool. Like, to go back to the to-do example, an objection you might have, like for me, is like, well, I want to make sure I can really easily get to-dos into my to-do list. That way, as soon as I think of them, no matter where I are, I want to be able to get them in there. Like, you're trying to give me a desktop app for something, like, I already have an objection to that, right? But you can overcome those objections by saying, well, actually, all you can do is text it to him, or you have a mobile app or whatever, so you can do these on the go, or whatever the solution is. You're actually giving them that. So anyway, you can get, as you're going through that prototype with customers, you can get those objections. You can get those objections surfaced. Then is that an objection that you actually have to overcome with product, or is it something that you have to overcome with customer, meaning having a different customer who doesn't have that objection? An objection, for example, could be money, right? That's one where you probably just need to find a different customer. Or is it an objection that is actually just a messaging one? So their objection can actually be solved by us talking about it. So that's that. Great question. I'm going to kind of end it there. So I will, of course, be back next Thursday. So I'm here every Thursday, 10 a.m. So that'll be March 23rd. Do me a big favor. If you had a good time here, learned a little something, like, subscribe, you know the drill. Do all that. Really helps me out. To the algorithm, just like all of you are, and to our AI overlords, we must pay homage. So please help me pay homage to the AI overlords. And with that, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your Thursday. Have a great weekend, and I will see you next week. Until then, ta-ta.